Welcome to US Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: teenage girl allegedly beaten by Iran's morality police now brain dead, says state media. These 9 candidates have joined the House Speaker race after Jim Jordan dropped out. Man accused of killing 15-year-old was beaten by teen's family during melee in Texas courtroom. Slain Detroit synagogue leader mourned at Sunday funeral, police seek motive. Vermont State Police searching for 2 young men who disappeared. Teenage girl allegedly beaten by Iran's morality police now brain dead, says state media. ABC. A teenage girl in Iran who was detained for violating the country's hijab law is reportedly brain dead, according to state media. Activists raised concerns that Armida Jeravand could face the same fate as Mahsa Amini, who died in the custody of the morality police last year. Jeravand was allegedly hurt after a confrontation with officers enforcing the Islamic dress code in the Tehran metro. Iran has imposed restrictions on women's dress since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Defying the strict dress code, more women have been appearing unveiled in public places across the country since Amini's death. These 9 candidates have joined the House Speaker race after Jim Jordan dropped out. Yahoo! House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik on Sunday announced in a post to X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, that 9 candidates have joined the race for Speaker after Representative Jim Jordan, Republican Ohio, dropped his bid last week. Man accused of killing 15-year-old was beaten by teen's family during melee in Texas courtroom. Associated Press. A man accused of killing a 15-year-old boy was attacked by members of the teen's family during a courtroom brawl in San Antonio. Victor Rivas, who is charged with murder, was waiting for a preliminary hearing when he was beaten. 4 people, including 2 men and 2 juveniles, were arrested and will be charged with assault and disrupting court proceedings. Last week in Houston, a similar incident occurred when family members of a murdered 16-year-old girl tried to attack her ex-boyfriend in court. Slain Detroit synagogue leader mourned at Sunday funeral, police seek motive. Reuters. The funeral for Samantha Wall, the president of a synagogue in Detroit, was held on Sunday following her murder over the weekend. Wall was found stabbed to death outside her home, and police are still searching for a motive. The Detroit police chief stated that there is no evidence to suggest that the crime was motivated by anti-Semitism. Wall was remembered as a supporter of the arts and an avid hiker. Her death has prompted an outpouring of grief from the Jewish and Democratic communities. Vermont State Police searching for 2 young men who disappeared. Associated Press. Vermont State Police are searching for 2 21-year-old Massachusetts men who disappeared under suspicious circumstances while traveling through several communities. Jaheim Solomon and Eric White were reported missing on October 15 after losing touch with their families for several days. The search efforts have included a weekend search with dogs. The police are concerned about the well-being of the pair and have not provided additional details about the search. Israel's dilemma: how hostage talks could bog down military plans. Wall Street Journal. Israel faces a difficult decision as it contemplates the next stage of its war in Gaza. If it continues to engage in indirect negotiations with Hamas regarding the fate of over 200 hostages, Israel risks becoming bogged down in talks with a group it has promised to destroy. However, if it proceeds with a ground operation before the hostages are released, Israel risks higher casualties and increased international pressure to limit its operations. Furthermore, a large-scale invasion of Gaza could result in a second front if Hezbollah attacks while Israel is engaged against Hamas. The risk posed by Hezbollah is so great that some have suggested Israel should launch a preemptive strike across its northern border to destroy some of Hezbollah's missile capabilities. Israel has called up roughly 360,000 military reservists in preparation for the next phase in Gaza. The ground offensive will focus on targeting Hamas fighters and leaders who use tunnels and fortified bunkers to evade Israeli forces. Israel is facing pressure from the US and other countries to delay the invasion to allow negotiations to continue for the release of the hostages and to allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. Iran sentences 2 journalists for allegedly collaborating with US. Both covered Mahsa Amini's death. Yahoo! 2 journalists in Iran have been sentenced to up to 7 years in prison for collaborating with the US government and other charges. Nilafar Hamedi and Elahi Mohammadi have been imprisoned for over a year following their coverage of the death of Mahsa Amini while in police custody in September 2022. The sentencing can be appealed within 20 days. The journalists were charged by the Tehran Revolutionary Court with collaborating with the US government, colluding against national security, and propaganda against the system. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists has condemned the decision and called for the journalists' immediate release. Biden holds call with key Western allies, Pope to discuss Israel-Hamas war. Yahoo! U.S. President Joe Biden held separate calls with the leaders of Canada, France, Britain, Germany, and Italy to discuss the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The calls came after Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Pope Francis. The discussions focused on preventing further escalation in the region and working towards a lasting peace in the Middle East. It is unclear why Japan, a member of the G7, was not included in the call with the Western leaders. There are concerns that the Israel-Hamas conflict could spread and lead to a wider Middle East conflict. That's all for today's news from the 6 Degrees World. I'm Dr. Six, your resident observer, here to bring you the latest updates from across the globe. Let's recap today's stories. In Iran, a teenage girl detained for violating the country's hijab law is reportedly brain dead after an altercation with officers enforcing the dress code. This incident follows the death of Mahsa Amini last year, raising concerns about the treatment of women in the country. On the political front, 9 candidates have joined the race for House Speaker after Jim Jordan dropped out. Meanwhile, in Texas, a man accused of killing a teenager was beaten by the victim's family during a courtroom brawl. The funeral for the president of a synagogue in Detroit was held following her murder over the weekend. Police are still searching for a motive, and there is no evidence to suggest the crime was motivated by anti-Semitism. In Vermont, 2 young men have gone missing under suspicious circumstances. The police are conducting a search and have not provided further details. Israel faces a difficult decision as it contemplates the next stage of its war in Gaza. It must balance the need to negotiate for the release of hostages with the risk of becoming bogged down in talks. There is also the concern of a potential second front if Hezbollah attacks while Israel is engaged against Hamas. Moving on to Iran, 2 journalists have been sentenced to up to 7 years in prison for allegedly collaborating with the U.S. government. The Committee to Protect Journalists has called for their immediate release. Finally, President Biden held calls with key Western allies and the Pope to discuss the Israel-Hamas conflict. The focus is on preventing further escalation and working towards lasting peace in the Middle East. These stories highlight the challenges and complexities facing different parts of the world. From human rights issues to political races and international diplomacy, there is never a dull moment. As always, I encourage you to share your thoughts and questions. What do you make of these stories? Let's start a discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.